What's up, party people? It's your girl, Nicole Banister, aka Nikki Banz, and you are back for another episode of NIKKI BANZ Live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome one, welcome all. What an absolute treat that Instagram is back online so that I can host my live show tonight. I have to say, party people, the way that the global WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram blackout of last night was literally shook me to my core. I was so worried that I wasn't going to be able to do my live show tonight because Instagram just wasn't going to come back online. But luckily, we are back in action and NIKKI BANZ Live is back in full force. Thank you so much to everybody who is tuning in right now to the live stream here on my Instagram at They Call Me Banz. It is an absolute treat to see all of you here today. Welcome one, welcome all. Today is Tuesday, and every single Tuesday on NIKKI BANZ Live, I am interviewing your favorite actors, artists, entertainers, entrepreneurs, authors, and other influencers from around the world so I can share their different perspectives, their different backgrounds, their different career paths and choices and passions, all in the hopes of just making sure that we get to see so many different folks around the world and be exposed to different ideas and mindsets. That's the whole point of NIKKI BANZ Live. You can catch us here on Instagram Live every single Tuesday. And yes, I'm seeing some people in the chat being like, I'm glad that the show wasn't last night. Me too. I'm also glad that the show wasn't last night, or else there would have been no show since we were in the middle of this global blackout. All right, everybody, our guest today is none other than the first piper, aka Ross Jennings, who is hoping to become the first person in the whole entire world to play the bagpipes in every single country. This is going to be an absolutely fascinating interview, and Ross is someone who is very near and dear to my heart. Not only is he this amazing jet-setting travel blogger and influencer, he also got me my most recent job at Nas Academy. Okay. So we got a lot to talk about with Ross here today. I'm just going to give it one more moment for some folks to hop on. Thank you to everyone who is tuning in. I see Julia is here. I see Tendai is here. I see Mama and Papa Banz are here. Welcome, Mom and Dad. Happy belated birthday, Dad. What an exciting time we have for you all today. I'm so stoked. All right, I don't want to waste any more time. I want to bring on the guest of the hour, the first piper, aka Ross Jennings. This is going to be such a fun and entertaining show. Let's get it started. I'm going to get a little drum roll going, and I'm going to bring Ross on now. So just give me one moment. All right, him on now. Here we go.
Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. Just double checking that you can see me okay and you can hear me okay. Yeah?
I can see you beautifully. I can hear you beautifully. Everybody in the chat, can you hear Ross? Can you see him? Give us a thumbs up. Give us some claps. Give us something in the chat, Some snaps, as I like to do. Well, hello there, friends. How are you?
I'm so great, Nikki. It's great to see you. And just as you have just said, I'm so glad this was not happening yesterday. Otherwise, it would not be happening at all. So it's great to be here, and great that we are back online and connected. Although it was a brief 5 hours of kind of bliss in some ways. But yeah, lovely to see you and lovely to be connected despite being 5-6 hours apart. Is that right? Is that roughly?
I think we're like 8 hours apart right now.
Oh, jeepers. Okay.
I know. But this is the whole point of the show. We got people coming in from all over the world. So tell us, Ross, where are you right now in the world?
I'm currently sitting in my sitting room slash kitchen in Guatemala City, where I live at the moment and have been living for the past 2 years with my other half, my partner. So Guatemala, if you're not totally aware of where it is in the world, it's in Central America, just south of Mexico and north of, I suppose, El Salvador and Honduras too. So if you're looking on a map, that is where I am right now.
I love it. I love it. So cool. And we're going to talk more about Guatemala and all of the amazing places that you've been in the world, because you have been a jet setter from the jump. Like, it wasn't just when you became, the first piper and you started, being this person trying to play the bagpipes in every country in the world. You have been traveling. So tell us a little bit more about like your background and your childhood growing up, because you have this super interesting story where you were like just totally all over the world.
So I think much like you, Nikki, I was very lucky to be able to live in different countries when I was growing up. I always say that the majority of my childhood was spent in China, in Shanghai in the 90s. My family moved there in the 90s just because of my parents' work, and it was such an eye-opening experience. I've never been through anything like that. Having I suppose not being that aware or conscious of my environment as a kid. When I was about 6, 7, we moved to Shanghai. And that is when I suppose I can start actually properly grasping onto solid memories of growing up and experiencing new things, and being thrown into this very, very rapidly changing city like Shanghai was incredible. It was a really cool point in time, especially for China and especially for a city like Shanghai, because it was changing not just on like a yearly basis, it was like a monthly, weekly basis. So it was pretty cool to witness, but I think it would have been way more, not enlightening, I suppose. I would have been able to digest it a lot more had I been a little bit older, because when you're a kid, you just accept things in front of you as your reality and normality. For my parents, it was a lot more of a challenge, I suppose. It was a very different experience for them. So I sometimes have memories that I've created through my parents, but also as a result of my own memories too. And I'm so grateful for my time growing up and living in China too, but also for my time in living in other countries as well. When I studied at university, I was lucky enough to live and go to the University of Edinburgh. And Edinburgh in Scotland is a city that I very much call home. Now, despite never growing up there, never really living there, it is my chosen home city, on top of Guatemala. And throughout that time, I've been lucky to live in other places like Thailand, Taiwan, and now Guatemala City.
Okay, this is like truly incredible. Like, you've lived on almost like every continent. You mentioned Europe, you mentioned South America, you mentioned Asia, and you spent quite a bit of time here in Cape Town as well.
Sure.
Hey, like family vacays.
Yeah, I'm missing Southern Africa. I'm missing Africa to live in. So we'll see. Hopefully in the future, inshallah, we can be based in somewhere as incredible as South Africa or Cape Town, where you are. And that is, in fact, for everyone who's joining, where Nikki and myself met about 5.5 years ago in the beautiful city of Cape Town.
Yes, yes. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things I like to do on NIKKI BANZ Live is kind of tell people like how I know the different guests who are coming on the show. And it was so wild because it wasn't actually even through you. It was through your, it was through your now husband, Travis, who was the one that actually found me through the Peace Corps network. So Travis and I are both RPCVs, we're both returned Peace Corps volunteers, and y'all were meeting up on this like influencer trip in South Africa to like get South Africa as one of the countries on your stops, right, for bagpiping. And Travis reaches out to me and he's like, I know you don't know me, but me and these two guys want to come to Cape Town and take pictures, and one's a bagpipe player. Can we crash on your couch for a week? And I was like, okay, random human that I've never met before in life, sure, come crash on my couch. But it's one of the best things I ever did, because now we're such good friends.
Truly, I mean, like, thank goodness I'm so grateful for so many things there, whether it is Peace Corps, I think just being thrown into an era or world where you can meet like really like-minded people. There aren't that many people, I suppose, out there that would be like, yes, random human, you can sleep on my sofa. Slash, side note, everybody, Nikki didn't even say sleep on my sofa. She gave up her bed to anyone visiting Cape Town in the near future. COVID protocols accepting. Hit up Nikki for a bed. She'll give you what you want, and she'll move on to the sofa. That was not intended in that way. She'll move on to the sofa. That's what I meant. So yeah, that was so lucky. And I mean, Travis is such a Travis, my husband. Just to reiterate that for those of you who are just joining in, is such a fantastic connector, and he's so good at just maintaining connections with people around the world. And just being kind with that as well. And because of that, because of his network through the Peace Corps and your network through the Peace Corps, we were able to connect. And I'm so grateful for that because, yeah, 5.5 years on, we're now colleagues. How wicked is that?
I know. It's truly incredible. And I'm actually really excited because we're colleagues now at Nas Academy. We're content creators, we're trainers, but like, you know, most of the time when we talk, we're talking about work, right? So this is like really lovely to just like chat about you and your life and all the awesome things that you do outside of Nas Academy, but we'll also talk about that as the interview goes on. I know we've got lots of Nas Academy folks tuning in right now. So, okay, so we've talked a little bit about this like really dynamic sort of upbringing that you had living in all of these different countries. So before you became the first piper, before that was you, who were you? What were you doing? Like, what did you study? Were you working? Or like, who was that person?
Gosh, okay, what a question. Wow, I suppose, yeah, how far back do I go? When I was studying international school in China, that was probably a solid foundation for the type of person that I was going to be. Being based in Shanghai meant that we were very lucky that we could travel around China, travel around East Asia. So we got to experience lots of places growing up. My parents traveled a lot with their work too, and that meant we as kids were able to travel with them. So we were so privileged and so lucky to be able to do that. And that gave me a very different outlook when I returned to do my high school in England. And at high school, I was at a boarding school in England, which is why I have a very English accent, not Scottish accent or Irish accent, much to most people's disappointment. Whenever they meet me, they always go, "Ross, you look the parts, but you definitely don't sound the parts," which is always a bit of honest truth. But after that, after high school, I then went on to the University of Edinburgh, and that was, I suppose, a good turning point in the way that I thought and processed how my future was going to pan out and be, because I very much prioritized things that I thought I should be good at, rather than things that I thought that would make me happy and maybe that I really wanted to do. So with that in mind, I chose to study Chinese and economics at university, which like sounds cool. And that's kind of why I did it, I think, because I like the wow factor rather than really wanting to do it and knowing what I was getting myself into. Because like often it still happens now, but I think maybe mentalities are changing when you're kids and your parents from a certain generation are prioritizing things for you. They're saying, look, we want you to be happy and we want you to be successful. And in their minds, that is just earning a good salary and having a stable life. And so for them, they channeled sort of suggested different things or routes I should go. And I thought, you know what? Great option. I'll do that. Economics is going to facilitate a great job post-university. But I didn't really take into account what that would encompass, because like economics is hard, man. Like at university, oh my gosh, the lectures I was going into, everyone around me was like far more superior than I was at every level. Just questions, understanding, speed at which they could comprehend concepts, and I'm there being like, I'm a baby gay, like in this new university world, working out who I am, what my future is going to be like, and like, what have I done? So university for me was less of an academic thing, more of like working out who I was, exploring what I was going to be and the kind of person that I wanted to be. And I think that's the same for lots of people, not just me. University is an important space to do that. And again, I'm so lucky that I was able to do that. So by the time I got to the end of my university career, after testing different things out, like work experience, internships, I decided the last thing I want to do is sit behind a desk and work in, first of all, luxury goods. That's the route I was going down.
Okay.
I had a job lined up with Louis Vuitton back in Shanghai, but I decided that was absolutely not for me. And then finished university without a job.
Yo, but I think this is the type of story that everybody needs to hear and needs to listen to right now, because I think there's so much pressure, whether it's from parents, whether it's from peers, to say like, this is the career that I have to do because it's going to make me money or it's going to make my parents happy. But it's like, no, like there are so many different things happening in our lives. And I truly feel like if we follow what we're passionate about, and if we go toward the things that actually bring us joy, then we'll be successful. We'll make the money. We'll have the lifestyles or the careers that we want to have, because we're going to be living our most authentic selves, you know. And I think it's so interesting to hear this background, like your background in Chinese and economics, and how you have pivoted so far from that. So let's now talk about like, so let's now talk about how the first piper was born. Like, talk to us about your history, like with the bagpipes, when you started playing, and then how you decided like, no, I'm going to be this person, I'm going to go travel the world and play the bagpipes. How did that happen?
Well, I suppose it first started when I first started playing bagpipes. That was the launch pad, and that happened when I was at high school. When I was 14, I just turned 14 years old, and I often tell this story. The first time I heard the bagpipes up close was when I was in it was a Monday morning school assembly, and all of our year group was sat there, and the head of year was going through the regular things they went through, like every single week, and then suddenly the bagpipes start, and in marches my bagpipe teacher to be, the most like awesome lady called Bernie Aiken, and she stood in front of us and piped for about 3-4 minutes, and I was just sat there thinking like, this is awesome. I was so excited. I was so excited. You know when you feel something, like you don't just hear it, you feel it, and the hairs raise up on the back of your neck, like you get goosebumps, you tingle, and you're like, holy shit, this is for me, and I have to do this thing. And it just felt so right. But also there were so many boxes being ticked there. My stingy self, they were offering one year's worth of free lessons, an obscene amount of free lessons, because they wanted to start a bagpipe band at the school. Like that even being a thing is kind of absurd, as you do. And they wanted people to learn how to pipe. But I was the only person in my whole year of like almost 200 kids. And then throughout the whole school, there was only 4 of us. It was basically nothing. And it was one of those things where like doing anything outside the sphere or the box was just considered a bit weird. But hey, I went for it. I found it hard. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't the best bagpipe student. My teacher was like, you're probably one of the worst. Like most people are onto the bagpipes after a good couple of months. It took me about a year. So to this day, I will still say that I have a lot more passion than talent, okay? So for any of you very good pipers out there, I'm sorry for all the notes that I mess up, but I still...
Oh, I think we lost Ross for just a second. This seems to be a consistent theme of NIKKI BANZ Live recently, that we're just getting busy signals. Let's see if he comes back just now. I don't know if it's just me. It could certainly be my internet. If you can hear me, give me like a thumbs up in the chat, or tell me if you can hear me or you can't hear Ross. Oh no. Okay, we lost Ross. I'm gonna bring back the first piper now. It very well could be my internet. I feel like this is happening to me on NIKKI BANZ Live. The joys of running a live show. Okay, I'm just, we can hear you.
You did lose me. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I feel like my last 3 guests have all like cut out. So I'm like, I think the problem is me. I don't think it's you. I'm sorry.
No,
You know,
I'm sure that was me. I tried to have a look at some. I tried to have a look at some of the comments to respond, but I ended up swiping down. So sorry, everybody. But I'm back. Hello. There's actually a lovely question. It's Lockie said, "Can I speak Gaelic?" I wish. To address that, so to give context to that, in Scotland, they speak 3 languages. You've got English, you've got Scots, which traditionally has never been considered an official language, but very much is. It's definitely a dialect and is gaining force in terms of language recognition. And then you have Gaelic, which is a Celtic language, very similar to Irish, but in Ireland they'd call it Gaelic. And I don't speak either of them. I can say some basic words like bread and I'm a boy, and I know the names of things, but I wish I could speak more. So sorry to disappoint. Is Lucky.
Okay, I just saw somebody in the chat ask if you can speak Mandarin since you talked about Chinese so much and growing up in Shanghai.
Well, just Nikki, I can throw this back at you. How's your Mandarin since going to high school in Singapore?
You know, 我会说有一点中文.
Oh my gosh, Nikki, there's you throwing out compliments. Team, Nikki needs to just interview herself and everything she's been through and all the languages she can speak, because it is equally mind-blowing, if not way more so. So my Mandarin is 还可以. I would say my accent is better than my actual fluency. So I always sound better than I am. Which gets me into interesting situations, but it's pretty good. The speed of translation of my Mandarin is better than other languages. So I try and keep it up, but not as much as I should and could do.
Okay, y'all, I just have to say, I think Ross is being like totally modest right now. Like, this man can speak Mandarin, y'all. Like, this man can speak. And then I think también tú puedes hablar en español. Like, we could just have this whole interview in like multiple languages.
Maybe.
Oh
Don't test me on my Spanish vocabulary.
It's okay. Spanish is coming. You know, Spanish. It'll keep coming. Okay, so I just want to say quickly, I love that everybody is dropping questions. If you see on the bottom of the live, there's a little circle, like a little question mark. You know, in a little circle, and you can click on that and ask questions. In the last 10 or 15 minutes of the show, we can ask all of your questions for Ross, aka the First Piper. We definitely want to get answers to your questions. So use that little like question bubble at the bottom of your phone there and drop all the questions because we want to we want to answer all of them. So yes, keep asking awesome questions in that little bubble there. Okay, so before the live cut out, thank God it came back, you know, it wasn't a blackout like last night, which we've been talking about. But before we cut out, you were telling us a little bit more about like the birth and the evolution of the First Piper. And we heard a little bit more about like, you know, your passion for playing the bagpipes, and you were offered this like amazing opportunity for like a full year of free classes. How did that transition into being this like international bagpipe playing travel blogger?
Okay, so skipped through school. I carried on playing the bagpipes. Like I said, not as good as maybe as I could have been. I then traveled I took a year out between high school and university, and I realized the bagpipes then were this wonderful facilitator for a couple of things. One, work opportunities. So I went back to Shanghai when my parents were still living, and I ended up being, I know this sounds insane, but I ended up being like 1 in a billion, because there were no other bagpipers in China. And I know this is an absurd thing, but okay, there might have been 1 or 2 other pipers, but I quite like that kind of like the impact of that 1 in a billion thing. So often within the British community and Scottish and Irish community, they had different events. So anything to do with like whiskey, they would need a bagpiper, or a piper, as we say. If it was a Scottish event or something to do with the British Embassy, they would need a piper. So often I would be brought in to pipe. And it was a great opportunity to actually earn money, which was then, I would then use to spend on travel. So I could then work, travel, and often my bagpipes were there. But it wasn't as cognizant as like, oh, I'll take them with me because it'll guarantee me good opportunities. And it wasn't until after university that it really kind of clicked that I have this really fantastic tool for making these wonderful cultural interactions. And after I finished uni, I thought, why not combine this like love for travel that many people have, but with something that I really like doing, and that is playing the bagpipes, and marry those two. And it didn't really click until I went to this conference slash exhibition in London, which happens every year in January without a pandemic, where adventurers from around the world speak about certain adventurous things that they've done. And after seeing this really cool guy called Dave Cornthwaite, who had done these wonderful expeditions, like he has Guinness World Records in like skateboarding across Australia. He does these awesome like man-powered, human-powered expeditions himself. I thought, gosh, this guy is such a lovely, heartwarming story. He got off his back and just started to put one foot in front of the other and then kick off his own adventurous world and go. And I thought, if this chap can do it, like, why can't I? So I cycled home that night. And this is often a story I do tell in my seminars, because I sometimes do seminars in international schools. The idea wasn't straight away. Like, I got to my front door and I decided I was going to be the first person to play the bagpipe in Antarctica. And I was like, sick. Like, this is it. I'm going to be one shot, Antarctica, bagpipes, a couple of penguins, awesome. There's the the money shot. I've just realized what money shot means, so I don't mean it in that way. And actually, I burst through my front door, and then I open up my laptop because I'm like, I need to do some research. Type it into Google. Has anyone piped in Antarctica? I press enter, and up pops this photo of a piper next to a penguin from 1906, and I was like, damn, this guy's beaten me by like 110 years. So I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna try and play the bagpipes in every country of the world and try and be the first person to do it. And a couple of months later, quit my job, and that was it. And the first official country I went to was Tunisia in North Africa.
Wow. Wow. Okay, this is just so cool, because again, it speaks to this theme of just being like, this is what I want to do. These are my passions. These are my goals. Let me just make it work. I will figure out a way to make this thing work because I want to pipe in every country around the world. So tell us, Ross, how many countries have you actually piped in, and what have been some of the most interesting countries and why?
Okay, so first things first, I quite like to acknowledge that when it comes to countries, I know it's sometimes like categorization is difficult. So what I decided to do was maybe address, like, it's going to be United Nations recognized nations, and that would be my tally that I would go for, because I found out that, like, even Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland considered countries, but were they part of my tally? I decided to just go for one criteria to begin with, and then once I hit that, then work from there. So with UN nations in mind, it's 105 countries, 105 countries so far, which is great.
Wow.
But when I messaged once I hit country number 100, which was the United States, my very lovely and supportive but honest mother, I messaged her going, Mom, I've hit country 100. And she goes, it's still not as many as the Queen. And I was like, savage.
Wow. Thanks,
but
Mom.
Honest feedback. Thanks, Mom.
Love you too? No. No, we do. We do love Mom. We love Mom. That is so interesting. Okay, so UN recognized nations, 105. That's totally incredible. And it's so cool that you've been able to travel to all these different places. So how do you do it? Do you do it in bunches? Are you like, okay, I'm going to do 5 countries in this area over the next like 2 weeks, or you're just like one and then the next one, then the next one? I'm sure there must be like so much planning that goes into this. Like, give us the deets, like the nitty gritty, the behind the scenes.
Yes and no with that answer in terms of planning and having the schedule and working out what I was going to do. I would say right now, it's also a difficult question to answer because of what we're living through and the pandemic. I haven't traveled to a new country for a year and a half. Wow. I still don't feel that it's something that is totally safe to do, and it's something that I want to promote just yet, which is why I'm holding off, and I'm very, very happy to do so, to kind of restructure how I travel and what I'm doing. But before that, pre-COVID or before COVID, BC, it was, sometimes it was solid months of planning. Other times it was just a bit piecemeal. I would get a bee in my bonnet about a country I really wanted to go to and just go there. And one of those countries, or it was a country that I'd wanted to go for so many years, and then just dropped everything so that I could make it happen. One of those countries was in 2015 and it was Ethiopia. Ethiopia, okay. As a kid, what really frustrated me was when we were learning things in geography and history and world history, there's such a one-dimensional view of many countries around the world, Ethiopia being one of them. And that was kind of frustrating, and I thought just bizarre that this one country was often defined by one word, and that was famine. And that was, and I just thought, hell no. And then I started doing research, because the internet's great and allows us to do that beyond what we were provided in school. And I came across this powerhouse of an East African world nation, that was Ethiopia, with such an incredible history, culture, so much to that. And it was totally different to anything I'd expected. And my experiences when I visited, totally blew my mind. I did a similar thing to how we interacted and met you, Nikki. I connected with someone on Instagram who was then very lovely to pick me up at the airport and let me stay with them, and gave me all these wonderful tips and suggestions for my time when I was in Ethiopia. And to this day, it remains one of my favorite countries. And I say one of my because I find it too hard to just choose one.
Yes, I completely agree. I think like folks who have the privilege, like you said, of being able to travel with the frequency that folks like you and I do, it's really hard to say we have a favorite, because we learn so much, and there's so much culture and so much history in each of these really unique places. And one of the things that I really love about what you do, Ross, when you travel, is you're not just going and taking these stunning pictures and places of you and the bagpipes. You're actually giving us history. You're actually giving us background and information on places, you know, like Ethiopia or places like Bhutan that like maybe a lot of people don't know about. And I think that's so cool that you do that. And in addition to that, you also work with students in these countries. So tell us a little bit more about like how you link up with schools and with students, and like what do you share with the young people when you go to all these different places and they're like, who is this man who showed up in a possible skirt and with this instrument we've never seen before? Like, how do the kids react, and how does that go?
I mean, well, after a few countries in, I decided like the initial reason for my travels wasn't to just take off countries and do this thing where you just collect countries as some people do, and everyone travels in their own way. I decided that's not what I wanted to do. So I established a bit of criteria for what, for me, constitutes visiting a country or playing the bagpipes there. And it would always revolve around three main things. One of them would be performing at a school or an educational institution, performing in a public place, kind of like a random or pre-organized performance, or some sort of challenge. And what I mean by that is like hiking up a mountain and then piping on top, something like that, or trying to do a duet or a jamming session with a local band. Now, they didn't always work out, those three, but it had to be at least one of them. And with that, the easiest thing to facilitate was doing workshops and performances at schools in all the countries I'd go to. Primarily with international schools, because having gone to international schools, it was an easier thing to facilitate. At these schools, any school or educational institution has to establish a bit of trust, and there has to be a bit of accountability with visiting speakers, and I get that. So I would use the international school as my first step, but then often try and pair it up with a local school. But local schools were easier to facilitate when I was in country. So often I would just turn up to a school wearing my kilts and holding my bagpipes, because it was easier to explain what I wanted to do. And sometimes I was able to do both local and international schools, sometimes not. And in these sessions, what I decided to do was, it was actually off the back of my trip to Ethiopia. That was the first official international school I went into. And I had all these questions from the students that I couldn't answer at all. And I didn't feel embarrassed. No, I felt embarrassed. I did, because I thought I should be able to answer these questions, like the history of the kilt. Like, why is tartan called tartan? Like, that the pattern that you find on kilts. I know in North America, they tend to call it plaid. There are different words for it. Like, where did the bagpipes come from? So that pushed me to do a bunch of research, put together different like sound bites of how I would communicate Scottish history, a bit of Scottish history, the history of the bagpipes, and tie it into a workshop that was kind of engaging, but also into anecdotes about my travels that were then maybe digestible by students in a kind of relatable way. It was an ambitious thing to pitch to schools, to be like, hey, I'm a motivational speaker, sort of, that wants to tell you about kilts and noisy instruments. But it has been, up until pre-COVID, a wonderful way to actually meet students, connect with individuals, and actually facilitate really cool interactions, because it gave me a purpose to being in a place rather than just, as you say, snapping an Instagram photo and then like piecing out.
I love that intentionality, Ross. And I think, again, that's one of the things that makes you so compelling. This is the reason why people love you and they want to follow you, because it's not just like you're collecting countries or ticking countries off of a list. You're trying to engage, you're trying to learn, and also challenging yourself to be able to share information about your history, your background, your culture, or the culture of piping, with these people who you go and visit. And you did something very, very special for your 100th country, the United States of America. You did not pipe on the ground, so this goes along with your theme of like doing something adventurous. You actually piped on a United Airlines flight. Tell us about that, and what was it like? Was it an actual flight? Like people were on the flight? Was it like we got to hear all the deets about this, because that to me is just like unreal.
Okay, so I decided, I don't know at what point, maybe country number 50 or 60, that I would save the United States for country 100, because there's such a big bagpipe community in the United States. Of course, Canada and lots of other countries too, but USA being one. And Travis, my other half, being from the USA, I wanted to make it a bit special. So I kept on having to delay my bagpiping thing there for a couple of years. But it came in 2019, and I decided to coincide it with something called the New York Tartan Parade, which is kind of like the St. Patrick's Day Parade, but not Irish culture, very much Scottish culture, focusing on traditional Highland dress, kilts, tartans, bagpipes, clans, that sort of thing. It's a tiny little parade compared to St. Patrick's Day, but it happens at the start of April every year, COVID permitting. And off the back of this, I thought, you know what? I have to fly to the United States. Why not try and see if I can get a free flight? So it's contacting different airlines, and United were the one that seemed to grasp it, because they have a direct flight from Edinburgh to New York. And so it aligned really perfectly. And they were super excited for it. It was a tiny little plane, just a plane, not a tiny plane, but a plane with one aisle rather than two aisles, not one of those bigger planes that you would expect to be flying across the Atlantic. So I thought, God, I feel so sorry for these poor passengers. I piped them onto the plane, and then as we were at, I don't know how many thousands of feet, it was really cool. The captain came out of the cockpit and then did a really, really lovely announcement. And then I piped down from one end of the plane to the other and back. And something I totally forgot was, of course, when you're at altitudes, different pressures and different, basically, it's a lot harder to blow. When you're that high up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like who would have thought?
Because of course there's like pressurized cabins, but I was like, oh wow, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So my tuning wasn't the best, and I marched from first class back through to economy, all the way back up. And I think most people received it quite nicely, but there were definitely lots of amusing like video clips of like the grumpiest people. One dude like looked up and like visibly mouthed like, "Oh, the fuck's sake."
That is so funny.
Which is fair enough.
I love it. You're like celebrating this epic milestone in your piping career. You got the sponsored flight by United. You're so proud, and people are just like, what is going on?
Who is this guy? Shut up.
Okay, that is so funny. I love it. I love it. And that was fun. During your trip in the United States, actually, you were featured on some TV show. And I remember because, like, yeah, there was some, I don't know what it was called, but you were interviewed for some show while you were in the US. And I remember it because I was here in Cape Town and I get this message from my mom who's like filming the TV. And like, I think my mom is watching the live right now. Hi, Mom. Yes, we're talking about you. And she's filming the TV and she's like, Nicole, isn't that your friend? Isn't that your friend? He's on the TV. He's on the news. And I was like, yeah, that is my friend.
And what the hell is he doing? Yeah.
No, we're huge fans. The whole Banister family, we're big fans.
Thank you, Banister, Mum and Dad. I'm sorry I wasn't able to visit you, but next time.
Yes, next time for sure. Next time for sure. So you had this like amazing partnership and sponsorship with United. You do all sorts of really cool partnerships and sponsorships, and you just had a really dope collaboration with Netflix. Yo, Netflix! Netflix in the building.
Okay, so to give it context, it definitely sounds way more sexy and like exciting than maybe it was. It was very, very cool nonetheless. Okay, I'm very grateful for it. Of course, very grateful for it. But when this email comes through and you get an email from Netflix or someone repping Netflix, you're like, this is it, man. Yes!
I made it.
They're going to make a TV series out of me. But they were just like, can we have a couple of bagpipe shots of you? We're going to send you a shot list of all the types of shots that we want. And there were some interesting clips. There was a bubble machine involved. There were balloons involved. There was dancing. What else? There was like, they got me to do numerous door reveals, like opening the door. And the reason for this was because there is this Nickelodeon series called The Loud House. And they were launching a film through on Netflix about this fictional or animated character's time in Scotland. So they wanted to combine some real piping scenes with the trailer for this particular Netflix that was launching. So a film that was launching, and they got me and some two other pipers involved. One piper who is very famous. He's called the Uni Piper. If you've ever seen a unicycle piper with a Darth Vader mask that like blows fire out of his bagpipes, that's the Uni Piper from Portland. He's a wacky fella with a great social media following. I know there's a lot happening there.
There's a lot.
The other person, the other piper, is this exceptional piper as well, called Piper Ali, I believe, Piper.Ali. And she is now, like, without fangirling over her too much, she is so cool. She is like a legitimate musician and does these awesome mashups on the bagpipes. And like, yeah, she's now one of my favorite people to follow, other than you, Nikki, of course.
Oh.
So if you're looking for really, really good, legitimate pipers out there, those two are awesome.
Okay. I love it. We might have to get them next on NIKKI BANZ Live. We'll just I'll interview the whole piping community, you know? I'm just gonna make a thing out of it.
Only pipers.
So we have like 15 minutes left of the show. Remember, people, if you want to ask questions for the first piper, there's a little question box at the bottom of the chat. You know, that little thought bubble with the question mark in it. Type your questions in there. We'll make sure Ross has an opportunity to answer those. But before we get to, you know, the audience and the people's questions, you have other things going on besides the fact that you're this amazing, you know, bagpipe player and traveling all over the world. And one of those things is Nas Academy. And, you know, we got a lot of the Nas Academy fam tuning in here. So we got to give a little shout out. So talk to us about Naz Academy. Talk to us about your role, and also talk to us about this amazing course that you're launching that everybody can buy tickets for and take your course. Tell us all about it. We want to hear all the plugs, all the promos.
So it kind of starts with COVID, I suppose, as many people's lives might do now, or changes in lives might do. Last year, I'll be honest, was a way more a tough of a year than I let on. Everything in my world when it came to work was just non-existent. I worked in the tourism world and then did workshops at schools. That disappeared. And with very little support, like many people around the world, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I decided to finally do something which I thought, which I've been putting off, and that was creating videos around my travel, delving into all the video clips I had taken but done nothing with, and turning them into videos. So it was the start of my editing and my YouTube channel and sharing lengthier videos on my socials. Because of that, the NAS Academy found me as a result of me sharing my video on Facebook, and then asked me to become one of their trainers. And long story short, from being a trainer, after many months teaching lots of different classes, including their Creator Masterclass, which you and I both know is a fantastic 1-month-long course, getting you from zero to hero on your content creation journey, I then became one of the main facilitators, sort of the head trainers, if you will, or head facilitators. And that's how we then became connected through the NAS Academy again, Nikki. And as a result of that, I was asked to launch my own course. And that is starting in about 18 or 17 days. And that's going to be on productivity and memory in a nutshell. And that might be something you all might be thinking, Ross, are you a psychologist? Do you have the best memory? Or are you the most productive person? And I'll be the first person to say no. But I do have some great techniques, tips, and mechanisms that I've had to put together over the past few years to make sure that I'm staying on top of all the different projects that I'm doing. And I want to share those techniques in a 2-hour session on the 23rd of October, which is a day before your course, Nikki. So I look forward to joining that as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, to everybody who is watching this live on Instagram right now or watching the rerun on YouTube, you can go to nazacademy.com/Ross and go check out Ross's course. You can sign up. It's going to be awesome. We're all here rooting for you. We're so excited. And yes, and I think it's actually really, really special to me that we now have this NAS Academy connection in addition to just following each other on the socials over the years. It's quite cool. It's quite cool. So
and I feel very lucky as well to be able to not only have a friendship, be able to work with a friend as well across flipping an ocean, 2 oceans nearly. Yes.
We've met up in South Africa. We've met up in, I think, Zambia we met up in Zambia briefly.
Yeah.
We just the most incredibly random and cool places, which is and that will continue for sure. That will continue. Okay, we have 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to the questions that people are asking in the chat. I think there's a lot of questions, 7 questions. Also, I'm just going to put it out there that I fully expected Travis to make some kind of cameo. So so I'm just going to put that out there. So, Travis, if you're listening.
Thanks, Travis. I think he's working, so he'll get the lowdown later.
Okay, but we have to give Travis all of his props since he was the one that initially connected us. So shout out, Travis. We love you. Okay, I'm going to look at these questions in the chat. We have so many questions. Okay. So I have an awesome question here from my homegirl, Amani. Hey, Amani. Amani is asking, has playing the bagpipes allowed you to also interact with other countries' local instruments and local music more so than just being a regular traveler?
Absolutely. That's the short answer. The long answer is yes, because something I do try and do is either connect with local musicians if I can, but also local pipers. Because a wonderful fact about the bagpipes is that the bagpipes are Scottish, yes, but they're not just Scottish. I always quite like pushing the idea that they're one of the most international instruments because there's over 130 different types of bagpipes from around the world. Yeah, from something like 45 plus different countries. And
Wow.
their birthplace is nowhere near Scotland. It's in fact in what they believe to be, well, it's in modern day Egypt, although there are some suggestions that it could be from what is modern day Turkey or Iran even. But music historians tend to agree that it is that region of the world. And with trade and basically trade, yeah. Bagpipes were introduced to different cultures, and every European country, North African country, South Asian country, I think, as well, adapted and created their own version of the bagpipes. So whenever I'm in one of those regions, so whenever I'm visiting the Middle East, one of my favorite things to do is to meet up with local pipers of like their version of bagpipes and see how easy it is for them to play my pipes, but me to play their pipes too, and try and do some sort of either jamming session or interaction. A lot of the time, it doesn't work. It sounds awful, but it's been a great way for me to connect with local musicians. Another one, Guatemala, has nothing like the bagpipes, but their national instrument is the marimba. And last year, again, pre-COVID, I went up to a northern city in the highlands of Guatemala called Huehuetenango, and was able to do a concert with a really awesome marimba band and a small music school. And although the notes were just totally off, we managed to hash out something, and it was pretty cool. It was a pretty fun evening.
That is so cool. I love that. And I love that question too, you know, because I feel like it's so important. Like it's literally a cross-cultural exchange, right? You're going there to learn about their country and share your expertise, but also, you know, learn from them and grow with them. So that's so cool that you collabo with local artists. I love it. I love it. Okay, we have another question here. You can tell this is from the Nas Academy team. We've got our very own Sai here, another Nas Academy trainer. So Sai's question is, what do companies like United Airlines or the UN look for among creators to sponsor them? So like, what are these companies like looking for when they want to sponsor creators? That's an interesting question for all the travel bloggers and aspiring influencers out there.
That's actually a fantastic question. And there's not one answer.
Oh no, Ross pauses right as like the most, the question that everyone's like on the edge of their seats for, like how do we get sponsorships? And scene. Okay, I'm gonna give it a moment for Ross to come back and join us. Even though that was such a fantastic question, Sai, and we're gonna get Ross's response 100%. Okay, I'm gonna bring Ross back on in just a moment. I love doing live shows. You never know what's gonna happen, okay? Even if our guest leaves, we'll just get him right back on. Okay, I'm bringing Ross back on now. Hopefully he will be back on just a moment. There you go.
I did it again.
I know, it's okay. It's like the question that had all of us like on the edge of our seats, like this is how we become sponsored influencers, and then it's like cut.
Good way to avoid awkward questions. Just pretend you're becoming disconnected. Sorry, yeah, we've got 7 minutes left, so I'll try and dive into that because it could be a long-winded one. There's no easy answer, I suppose, because I don't work for any of these brands, but I have worked with lots of big brands, and surprisingly, lots of them have said yes, genuinely. When I first started, and the reason I say surprisingly is because when I first started, I had plenty of people just turning around to me and being like, Ross, this is such a niche journey. It's unique, but it's just a bit weird. Like, how can we collaborate when it's so niche? We have nothing to do with Scottish culture. You're wearing a kilt. Like, what's bagpipes got to do with our airline or our particular brand? So sometimes it's not just about like what visually people see, but it's obviously about your values too. Of course, a big influencing factor is your numbers, annoyingly, on social media. And when we initially started, when I first started posting on Instagram in particular back in 2014, I was late to the game. I'll be honest, very late. Because it had been around for many years. And I know that there was lots of different ways of working with brands, and the most important one back then was just having a lot of numbers behind you. I didn't. So what I tried to do initially was convince brands in other ways. I try and give them the whole package. I wouldn't just post on my social media. I would help them post on their social media. I would take photos for them. I would provide more content than just one photo. And I know now that seems normal, but back in 2014, that wasn't. I had to convince many brands that like Instagram was worth their time. Like watch brands, a menswear brand in the UK that made watches and like men's accessories. And I helped them and I created all their marketing content for many, many months, which was great. That paid for my travel initially. But when it's one-off gigs now, here and there, honestly, it's about dedicating time every week, every month to just reaching out to people, contacting them, hassling people. I know you might feel like you're bothering people, but do that. Send an email with a pitch document explaining exactly what you can do, how you can add value, how many things or assets you can provide them, what your demographics are, what your values are, and be nice with it. Be nice. Like, there's so much value, and this is something Travis has taught me. Not saying that I'm not a nice person, but he is the nicest human I've ever met in my entire life.
He truly is.
Not just nice, he's kind, and he makes me believe altruism is the thing, because he just does things out of the kindness of his heart, not knowing that he's going to get anything back, just because it's the right thing to do. Saying thank you, the power of saying thank you, the power of just being human on your emails. Because a lot of the time with these brands, they're represented by PR companies, and these poor PR people are like hassled and berated with non-stop requests. So being human, doing your research, and really finding that thing that's gonna show them that you are adding value. I know those are really wishy-washy things, but keep chasing up, keep hassling, because having no answer is not an answer. Don't accept a lack of response as an answer, because that is not reflection of your ability, especially as a creator. Keep on chasing people up until they say no. No is an answer, and then you can move on. And that's something I know, which might be annoying, but it's definitely worked in the past. Continuously chasing up with people, touching base, being kind, etc., etc. I think I've covered lots of things there in a roundabout way.
You truly did, but I think that's really great advice for all of us, you know, and even for myself who's launching this brand, launching this show here. Those are all tips and tricks and advice that I can move forward with around being kind, being consistent, being persistent. So thank you for that, Ross, and thank you for that question, Sai. We have someone here, Youssef Talbi21 says, not a question, but I just wanted to thank Ross for his joyful and heartwarming content. You're a follower from, and he's saying he's your follower from Algeria. Oh, thanks, Youssef.
Youssef, I really look forward to meeting you one day in Algeria. I cannot wait for that.
That is amazing. I'll go to Algeria with you, Ross. I've never been there.
Deal. Done. Who's in? Who's in?
Who's in? Exactly. Everybody, give us like a little plane emoji in the comments if you're gonna join us. Okay, there's a question from Muriando that says, where's one place you traveled where you felt intense culture shock?
Honestly, everywhere I go to now, I do feel intense culture shocks. I think it's less about, well, there's so many things there. It comes to, I suppose, how different a culture is, but also your frequency of travel. When I went down from Edinburgh in Scotland to London the other day, a couple of weeks ago in August, it was just for a short period of time. I got out of the train station and I was like, holy shit. Just because I was so not used to being in such a big city. And that was a culture shock between Edinburgh and London. That's a 4-hour train journey. And you wouldn't think that's would be a huge culture shock. And just because it's a different pace, I think I would feel that if I went to New York. I felt that when I came back to Guatemala. Every country has a different pace of life, a pace of movement, and it is always a shock. One thing, I suppose, the question maybe you're looking for is when I was traveling with the bagpipes and like playing in different countries. And one place that really did not shock me, because I think shock can be seen as a bit of a negative term, but like it was just so different to anything I'd experienced. Was traveling in Japan. I think I had thought I would find it familiar, in a naive way, having grown up or spent a lot of time growing up in Shanghai. I can read kanji, sort of, because of Chinese. And kanji alphabet is one of the alphabets in Japanese, is the same characters or many similar characters to Chinese characters. So I thought it would be familiar, but it was just so unfamiliar on another level that it was such a crazy experience. I honestly felt very lonely. I was in Tokyo for a solid week and I felt so lonely, but also so heartwarmed in lots of different moments. And I will never forget, I think I was also lonely and a bit sad because I had no money left. I literally had about £50 left in my bank account and I was like, this country is expensive. I had gone to a 7-Eleven, or the equivalent of a 7-Eleven, and I got like my lunch, and I sat in the park outside this 7-Eleven, and I got out my little bagpipe chanter, not the big thing, the practice thing. And honestly, 30 seconds later, this guy walks past, and he goes, "Oh, bagpipe." And I was like, what? Like, how do you know this is a bagpipe? I wasn't even playing the big thing. It was this chanter, which looks like a recorder. And long story short, he was an artist who had studied the bagpipes, and he had decided to create his own version of the bagpipes, no joke, using a vacuum cleaner, a gym ball, and lots of like balloons, like party balloons. And I chased him down because I was like, hold on, wait, mate, how did you know that was a bagpipe? He didn't speak much English. I was embarrassed to not speak that many Japanese words, but we managed to communicate somehow, and he demonstrated how he had created his own version of the bagpipes with his own material because he studied bagpipes. Like, how bizarre, but how cool is that?
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. And it's like, that's one of the things about travel. You have these moments where you connect with people in the most unexpected and spontaneous ways. And that is just so cool. So cool.
It is. And I'm very lucky and fortunate for it to happen. Now, I don't want to hold you on too much because I know we're 2 minutes past the hour. You're a busy human, Nikki.
Well, you are a very busy human too, and it's much earlier in your day. I'm basically just gonna go and like call it a night after this. But okay, very, very final thing that I'll just ask you, you know, for your fans, for your followers, for folks like me, like what's next? What can we expect from you? What should we keep an eye out for, you know, as you continue to grow and thrive around the world?
Oh, great question. Well, I'm lucky enough still to call Guatemala City my home. I want to travel and explore as much of Guatemala as possible before we potentially move next year, who knows? So lots of more Guatemalan focused stuff and content. I'll be honest, I've been a bit lazy on my content creation journey over the past few months, prioritizing other things. Yes, now my other half is here, berating me, saying I need to make more videos. I do.
Hi,
Travis.
We've been talking about you, Travis. We've been talking about you. We love you.
I would say
that.
I think my way, how I travel and what I'd be doing in the past definitely does need to change and will change when travels kick off again. I'm not sure exactly how. The content I create will probably be a bit different too. I definitely can't do it as regularly as I thought I could. So shorter content. I might even play with the idea, and this is definitely might seem as a new thing, with moving away from the idea of the first piper, because the idea of being the first person to play the bagpipes is not important to me anymore. My journey has evolved. Being the first person to do something shouldn't be a reason for doing anything. And for me and travel, it definitely isn't. I could be the last piper. It wouldn't matter to me in the world because the experience is, here comes a cliche, it's way more about the journey than the end goal. Yeah, it would be cool to play the bagpipes in every country of the world. Yes. And I definitely endeavor to do that. But it could take 10 years. It could take my lifetime. But for me, it's more about what I do in all those places I go to. The countries and the borders that make those countries are so arbitrary to me, and they should be arbitrary to other people. It's more about the individual that you're interacting with or the people that you're connecting with as well. So I know lots of cliches there, but I really, really feel that. So I'm not saying I'm deleting my account. Don't worry, don't worry. Absolutely not. But maybe a segue in terms of content. I've just started my interest, or not career, but my research in solar power, and I'm trying to convince my parents and my family to switch over to different sources of energy. And I know that's something I want to do research on and maybe share more content on too, because it's an important switch, I think, that needs to happen, particularly given news over the past few months. Anyway, We'll save that for another conversation. Climate change.
Well,
we're not gonna cover that in 30 seconds. So.
Yes, we're not going to cover climate change in 30 seconds, but as you endeavor to pivot and get more into climate change or solar power, solar energy, there's no better example than you of someone who can say, you know what, this is what I want to do now, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I'm passionate about, and you just dive in full force. So we're here for it. We're excited to follow your journey, and I am just so grateful to you, Ross, for coming on the show and for chatting with me for the past hour, sharing more about your life and your experiences. This was such a treat, and it's always a pleasure to be in community with you. So thank you for hopping on NIKKI BANZ Live. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. This was a very special interview.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Sending loads of love and good vibes, and we'll see you when we see you in another Zoom session, perhaps.
Exactly. We'll see you on Zoom and Mass Academy.
Bye, team.
Thank you so
Ciao,
much,
everybody.
Ross. Thank you, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Bye.
Bye. And bye, Travis.